Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Government Business Today. Each week we come at you live, bringing you news, bringing you tips, strategies, and connecting you to resources to help you grow your government contracting business. Each week we come on and we share some stories with you, some live experiences, some lessons learned, if you will, and we enjoy coming at you with whatever platform you happen to be viewing us on. So whether you're on Facebook, Twitter, whether you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, you can always get to us here at Government Business Today. And guys, don't forget, you can join us right in the chat room if you have questions that come up during the course of the podcast today. And today, guys, if you're watching us live, you will see on your screen Miss Angela Randolph. We're really excited to have her as a guest this week. And so we're going to be talking about you getting some accounting work done for your business. Let me just tell you what. Robert and I talk about this all the time because, as you guys know, we're in the finance business, and I will tell you a tenet of finance, and that's this. If you guys are a writing person, let me tell you what, jot this one down, and that is, in finance, the facts do not count. All that counts is what you can prove. And guess what? If you can't prove it, whether it's a fact or not, it is completely irrelevant, and that's why I'm excited to have Angela Randolph on with us today. So as always, guys, I would be remiss if I did not introduce my co-host, the Hall of Famer himself, the Wall Street Hall of Famer, Robert Lindgren. Robert,
hey, Irv. I'm doing great. How about yourself, man?
Hey, man, doing really good. Listen, I'm coming off of a long weekend, man. I'm all jazzed up, man.
Oh yeah, you and me both. I mean, basically, it just seemed like 4 days. It was fantastic. I had a great weekend. I mean, I got a nasty case of poison ivy that I'm certainly not going to show on screen. But if I do accidentally, I just want to apologize if I horrify anybody beforehand. But it was fantastic. Just a great, are you guys allowed to do fireworks down in Texas?
Yeah, we are, and fireworks is kind of a big thing here.
Yeah.
I mean, even our baseball team, on Friday nights they just light up the sky.
No. But I'm talking about like home fireworks. Like, are you?
Oh
yeah. Oh yeah. So we're. It's kind of like if you ask for permission, that you're not allowed. But I mean, it just seems like Connecticut doesn't have. It just seems like 4th of July becomes a free for all for anybody and everybody. So for spending the fireworks, it's just a blast. Literally.
Well, listen, you mentioned about getting into some poison ivy. So listen, my heart goes out to you, brother. And I'm really hoping that it's in some place that you can reach, okay? Because I got to tell you, man, poison ivy is a mean thing.
Oh, it's just such a pain, literally, and it just. But you know what? It is what it is, and this too shall pass, and it's just a little unsightly for on some of these video calls. We've been on a couple of calls already, and I like lift my arms up, and people are like, what is that? So is it monkeypox?
Oh no, not the monkeypox.
Sorry, bad joke. Anyway.
So I know we had a holiday week, long weekend, and so I don't know that you got into too much this past week.
No, not really, man. I mean, it was more about just kind of relaxing, and it's funny because I was looking through my notes just over the last week. I mean, we had that great call with Dr. PJ last Thursday, and I think I kind of checked out from about Thursday afternoon until yesterday morning.
Hey, well, listen, you know what? It was a well-earned break, man.
Yeah. Well, you too, man. You went down and saw your friends and family, so you saw your boys and saw your family and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I had an opportunity to sort of interact this week with the director here at the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and, tell me about that.
Yeah, so what they're doing, of course, the federal agencies a lot of times try to do collaborations with local agencies, believe it or not, and especially centered around transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this particular instance, we've been working for quite a while now, putting together different education. I'm big on education for government contractors. And so one of the things that we're looking to do is put together kind of a programmatic approach, if you will, to making sure that we educate contractors and bridging some of those gaps that continue to plague government contractors and inhibit their growth.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the things that we talked about, and we're looking at doing that obviously in collaboration with some of the local agencies. And I'm talking about the city, the county, some of the precincts here in the Houston area. In fact, I'm really excited about an upcoming cohort that we're starting here with Harris County Precinct 2, and they have decided to make some investments in education for government contractors to try to shore up education and position those businesses to be able to go after some of the county opportunities that will be coming up here in this coming fiscal year. So I'm really happy to be involved in doing that as well. So I've been kind of working through that whole process,
I bet.
and so government is kind of our thing here
It's
at
what we do. It's what we
Business
do.
Today. It's just what we do.
Well, talk about education, right? I mean, that's so much of what you and I and what ACA is all about, and also obviously with these podcasts. And Angela, obviously, you've been, we could maybe use that as a segue because it seems like Angela's big on education as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And having said that, guys, if you have not had the opportunity to meet Angela Randolph and hear her, go on social media, listen to some of the posts, read some of the posts that she's put out there. Really, really great information. And it's what I like to call, I call it street smart information, right? Where she's going to share with us her background. And I'm really excited for you guys to get to hear about her background, her professional experience, and so on, because I want you to know that just like always here on Government Business Today, we want to put subject matter experts in front of you. And so with that said, welcome Angela Randolph to Government Business Today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, that's great. So Angela, let's jump right in. So tell us about your professional background and your experience, your industry, all that good stuff.
So, okay, most of my professional experience has been right here in the state of Texas. I started out as a sales and use tax auditor with the Texas Comptroller, going around from business to business, auditing for sales and use tax compliance. And from there, I went on to Arthur Anderson. Used to be part of the Big Six once upon a time in the late 90s, and did public accounting and auditing, financial statements. Did that for a few years, and then I entered into oil and gas, financial accounting, month-end close, working with internal auditors, you name it. I did that for about 15 years, and then I entered into the federal government space, doing tax auditing for the IRS for 11 years. So,
Ooh,
holy cow.
Look, Angela, you gave me chills.
Angela, you did this for businesses or personal or both?
Businesses.
My goodness.
And the department that I was in was the large business and international group. And I've also worked several projects working with nonprofits, and then also working with high income, high net worth individuals, because that's an area that previously didn't have as much coverage. So they were under a mandate to get more audit coverage for those high net worth individuals. So that was one of the more recent projects that I was on. And then also partnerships, because that was also a traditional area that didn't have as much coverage as your Schedule Cs, as your C Corps and S corporations. So they're getting around to covering people who hadn't been covered who hadn't been touched previously. So definitely. So I've had a mixture of financial accounting, auditing, tax, sales and use tax, financial planning and analysis. I think I've done just about everything that you can do in accounting.
Wow.
That is amazing. So Angela, I've got to go back and touch on something. So did I understand that you're saying that there are groups of entities or businesses that are not necessarily paid that same amount of attention to, say, by IRS than others? So
Unfortunately,
it's not equal across the board, is what you're saying.
it's not. And the way that audits are selected could be a number of different ways. They could be randomly selected. They could be part of a special project that the IRS has noticed things happening in a specific industry. It could be through like related entities. If you're working on one entity and as a part of that examination, you discover other things, like maybe with third parties, suppliers, vendors, and things like that. And I know during my tenure there, I tried not to. So the examiners have the authority to pass on an examination if they risk it and examine it and review it, that is not a lot of potential there. And so if an audit was previously examined and didn't have any additional tax due, I try, unless it's something that's just sticking out at me, I try not to go back out there again, because there's lots of companies that have never been audited before. You want to kind of reach out and touch those people, for compliance purposes. But yeah, there were, because it made it all the way to Congress that it became a mandate for high income, high net worth individuals. And they usually had flow throughs like partnerships and corporations and multiple entities. So the approach was, we don't just look at one entity, we look at everything that taxpayer is involved in. So that was different compared to how they generally approach an audit. Usually just you're looking at that one entity, and if there was something that you needed to explore with the related entity, you could expand it.
So, wow. Angela, I'm kind of curious, because when I think of an audit, my background, as you know, is more on the investment side. But like when the SEC would come in and audit our firms, right? They would be looking for, they would do it more as not as a foe, but as a friend. If you basically were known to be, a well buttoned up, like, hey, this is where you might be a little off, or, is that kind of a similar approach, or, how friendly would people be when you knock on their door?
For the large business division that I was in, it wasn't as adversarial as say the small business group, right?
That's the word, adversarial.
They have the money. Yeah. They hire CPAs, tax lawyers to deal with the IRS people, and if they don't agree with something, they fully utilize their right to appeal, right?
Sure.
But I don't see that as much with the small business owners. Usually they don't have the resources to hire representation. And most times the issue is the lack of substantiation. It could have been a legitimate deduction, but because they didn't do a good job of record keeping or explaining the transaction, they just succumb to the tax bill, But the large taxpayers, they don't have that approach at all. They are they take advantage of their rights, and those taxpayer rights extend to everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back, Angela, kind of what I was getting at in our intro is that, the fact is you might have done or made an expense that is tax deductible. However, if you can't prove it,
right,
then that fact simply does not count. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means that now you can't prove it when somebody wants to come and conduct an audit. And I think, to your point, it's really incumbent, I believe, for small business owners, and especially, guys, if you're in government contracting, to look, if you're not a tax expert or an accounting expert, here's my tip, and you can jump in and tell me if I'm out of school here. But my advice to any of our listeners who are government contractors, or guys, if you're looking at getting into government contracting and accounting and tax is really not your thing, get help. Okay, don't try this on your own. This is one of those things that I think can really pay for itself, if you will, because it's an investment in your business. Where if I've got to hire out a CFO part time or on demand, or I don't know what the term is, but the point is, if you can get help in the accounting and tax area, 9 times out of 10, the money that you will actually save, whether that is in tax liability and payments, or the money you'll save from steering clear of penalties, things like this. To me, that's kind of a self-liquidating investment. Do you agree or no?
I do, because a lot of times, people think they're okay until they're made aware of a problem. In the IRS, they don't usually audit in real time. It'll be 2 years later, that you get a notice. And by that time, the year is already passed, the transaction is already gone, and it's too late to kind of make adjustments. So I encourage people, even as they start a brand new business, if you're not able to hire a CPA or accountant or something like that, consult with one. Try to learn how to do as much as you can on your own, and then when you're ready to outsource that, when you're bringing in enough revenues and things like that, you want to already have that relationship with a CPA or accountant. Then you can kind of transition seamlessly onto that. But it's definitely, even the IRS, this is a deductible expense. Professional fees, legal fees, accountant fees, they understand that businesses need these services, right? Unless you are specialized in this already, then they understand that you need the help. So
Angela, I completely agree. And I was rolling around in your website earlier in the last day or two, and, you've got these great courses, the birth business and taxes. I love the play versus, how that works, and the financial roadmap I think. And you've just got a lot of interesting, cool things out there where you're trying to get the word out. And I have to admit, I did take the "Are you a CEO" quiz. And you know how like you're taking the pop quiz, and I was just like, "Oh Lord, what?" Oh. But I'm happy to say it says that I should be a CEO, so I'm okay with that.
Good. Because starting out, people wear a lot of different hats.
Yeah.
And that can continue year after year after year. And so something's going to suffer,
Oh, yeah.
And if you let the accounting function suffer, you overlook taxes and the compliance, then that could be very damaging, to your business. So I try to
absolutely.
Yeah, help people identify where they're spending most of their time, what are some of their concerns around the business, and just being able to make good decisions for the business. You have to have good, solid financial data, because I can tell you, when we start an examination, we're not looking at the return. We're looking at your books, right? We want to know the source of the data and how reliable that data is. So
that's when, so that's where you're like, hey, we like QuickBooks, or, when you see a spreadsheet, you're probably less inclined versus just, something that's more professional, maybe is the right, or appears to be more professional as QuickBooks.
Right, because during the interview phase, they will ask who's in charge of this process, right? And so if it's you, then we already know you have limitations around, that, and we won't be able to really rely on the data as much. It could be personal expenses flowing through, and you certainly don't want that. Commingling of funds, and that really kind of distorts the financial statements. And this is some things you just don't want to do, and some people just may not be aware of it, but during that audit, they get the full scope of what's happening in the business. And most times business owners can speak very, very freely about the business itself, but when it transitions to the accounting part, that can be an area of some issues that may come.
Of course, 100%.
Well, Robert mentioned being on the website, so I think that's a good jumping off point for the next thing for us to get you to talk a little bit about your business and your consulting business and so on. So tell us about Stellar Ledgers and kind of how you came into doing that. And I especially want to hear a little snippet about how you made the jump over to entrepreneurship, because I think that's going to be some really meaningful and relevant information for our listeners.
Yeah, so I started Stellar Ledgers about 5 years ago. It started out as a side gig, a part-time business, as I was working full-time with the IRS. And so I was doing bookkeeping, financial reporting, controller and CFO level services, consulting. And then more recently, I started this online training academy to help train business owners on how to manage their own business finances. And so I basically started it to have additional streams of income. That's how it all started. I wanted to have a certain kind of lifestyle and not be limited by one stream, one GS table salary, so I just had my aspirations just kind of outgrew the job, basically, So last fall, at 4.5 years in the business, I decided to move into full-time entrepreneurship. And I was just mentally ready to step out and to really expand. I ended up starting a new business, a few months later. So it just gives me the freedom to kind of achieve my financial goals through a different route while still using my professional expertise that I've obtained, all these years.
Sure.
So Angela, how hard is it to follow your own professional advice?
I'm good at advising others, right? Eventually, I do follow my own advice that's inherent, in what my training has been over the years. But definitely, I have a heart to really help others and help other businesses thrive. And I always want to see them, in a position where they can meet their financial goals. And part of that is dealing with what the reality is, and if they're not making money, I have to communicate that. Or if they're spending, excessively in areas that's not fruitful, I have to communicate that. So, and it's all in an effort to help people achieve their financial goals.
So having said that, talking about financial goals, Angela, so what do you see as some of the issues that face small businesses? Because I know once this is a sensitive subject for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you see as kind of some of those issues that really have an impact on small business?
Definitely, I would say the number one thing is funding. They don't have enough of it. The business may not be making as much money as they anticipated. If they're bootstrapping and they don't have resources to, invest in the business or contribute from either their own personal funds or through banks or traditional lenders or alternative lenders. So funding is the number one thing that I see. A close second is tax problems. People have back tax issues. They haven't filed. And avoidance is the worst thing that you can do. Avoiding
Absolutely.
Especially when you talk about doing business with the government, doing anything with the government, they're going to want to know that you paid your taxes, that you're up to date, you're on a plan. And even some jobs want to know, if you filed your taxes and stuff. So it's very important, even if you're too out of compliance, I would have to refer you out because, I don't want to be in the IRS's, crosshairs either, So it's very important that people address their issues and not be afraid to just confront whatever it is. Just work out a plan, and
I'm glad you brought that up too, because I found that a lot of our clients, we run into clients who, because they start growing very quickly, oftentimes they can get, out of compliance pretty easily. But one of the challenges is that we have as a lender is when they just stick their head in the ground And Robert and I wind up having to encourage our clients a lot of times. Look, you have to deal with this, and you can't run from it. You got to deal with it now. You know, and it, you know, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but I would believe unless you're really an egregious offender, the IRS is not necessarily trying to put you in jail because you can't pay your taxes from jail.
Right. Exactly. I mean, they want the money, so they will be amenable to working out a payment plan, you know.
Yeah.
But ignoring it, it's just going to keep escalating, you know, and then putting liens on your property and all of this. And so just, you know, answer the questions, give them the documentation that they need. Just don't ignore official correspondence, you know.
Well, and I would also, I mean, to your point also, Angela, I mean, I read so much about how the IRS's staffing is so woefully understaffed and underfunded. And, you know, to your point about any communication with the IRS, you would also want to hold on to those. You know, like, hey, you know, this is the trail of, you know, paper trail that we had these conversations and along those lines, in addition to the transaction trail.
That's true, because sometimes they do have, you know, people that retire, they leave, they transfer out, and whatever conversations that you've had, they're not documented. If you don't have, you know, any letters or anything to kind of prove it, you can start the process all over again, and you don't want that, you know. So yeah.
So no, this is really good. So I know we're going to have some people who are brand new getting started. Some people have been in business 20 years already who listen to our podcast. And so where in the development timeline is the best time for, say, a company to start thinking about perhaps outsourcing their accounting, you know, to a CPA or a CFO type person, even if they're not at a place necessarily where they need a full-time CFO, but where do you see as a good time for them to start down that path?
I would definitely say when you're entering growth mode, you know, because things could happen very, very quickly. You could be at 100,000 1 month, and one major client could shift you into the 200 and 250K, and you need to know, you know, what that means for your business, tax wise, you know, structure wise, billing, you know, all these processes you want to make sure you have in place. So I would say definitely when you're in growth mode, I usually like the 200 to 250K annual revenue. You should be, you know, outsourcing to a professional. But I say as you begin, you want to establish a relationship with the CPA. If it's just to have a consultation, you know, because you don't know what you really don't know. And then from there, you can reconnect quarterly or twice a year to kind of update or even go over your QuickBooks to see if your file, you know, needs updates and things like that. So I definitely say starting out, establish a relationship, and as your business, you know, shifts into growth mode with 200 and above K annual revenues, you want to definitely outsource that activity.
Okay, so that's great. So listen, we got about a minute or so left here. So I want to get to this. I want to ask this question before we let you out of here.
Okay.
And that is, why is it important? And I want to hear from your vantage point. Why is it important for a small business to use an accounting system? Because I've seen all kinds of cuteness being done with regard to people trying to avoid using an accounting system for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is. And maybe I'm biased because I'm an accountant, right? But it's, you know, it's the language of business, right? Every business has to account for their activity. You want to be able to communicate not only internally, but to external parties, how well your business is doing, what the performance is. You know, you have banks, vendors, government agencies, everyone that you can come into contact with, a business partner. You know, you want to be able to communicate how well your business is doing, the financial performance. And the best way to do that is through having an accounting system that works for you and is, you know, efficient, you know, so you have to keep it updated. I'd say at the very least monthly. I mean, I like bi-weekly, updating your transactions and making sure everything is in there, you know, because a lot of times some of these, you know, the banks change their security a lot. So you may have to reconnect your accounts to QuickBooks and make sure all the transactions are in there, and just kind of, there's some things in accounting that you just have to do. It's just part of the accounting function. Reconcile your accounts, get all your statements, keep track of all your statements, all of your invoices and receipts. It's a process, and it can take a little time, but I promise you, 2 years down the line, when an auditor is asking for this information, you won't be stressed out. You say, here it is. I have it all, here and organized.
Hey, Angela, any systems that you personally, I mean, you said QuickBooks, but I mean, are there any
Xero
systems?
too. I
what?
use both Xero and QuickBooks.
Xero. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what about things on an app? I know that QuickBooks has self-employed
they have
apps and
apps.
stuff like that.
They have apps. I'm partial to those two because those are the majors for small business owners. But any system that'll help you track your transactions and keep everything in an organized manner, I'm all for. Because you can always transition to QuickBooks when you're ready.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, well, Angela, listen. Before we go, how do our listeners reach you if they need help? What's the best way for them to reach out and contact you?
Yes, so contact me through my website, stellaledgers.com, or you can send me an email, Angela@stellaledgers, that comes directly to me, and reach out, mention the podcast, and I will help you out any way that I can.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Angela, that's all the time we have for now, but thank you so much for joining us on Government Business Today. And guys, don't forget, you can always become a loyal listener. Join our listener club by going out to aca.credit, not .com, but aca.credit/podcast, and make sure you scroll down and register to be a loyal listener on Government Business Today. Well, Robert, is that all we got?
That's all I got, man. That's all I got. Angela, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today. It was really great.
Thanks for joining us, Angela. And guys, we will see you on next week right here on Government Business Today. Take care.
See you guys.